Hey everyone, it's Laura Curry from Fit and Funny Mama here. Happy Tuesday. If we haven't met before, my name is Laura Curry and I am a married mom of one from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Today I wanted to talk about how stress makes you fat. So if you don't know me or who I am or my story, I've struggled with obesity all of my life. And up until about a few years ago, I was doing kind of the yo-yo dieting thing, and then I finally felt that I had it figured out. I lost about 85 pounds in 9 months, and I did that by eating less than 1,200 calories a day, 6 days a week, working out like an hour a day, giving myself 1 day a week where I could full on binge my quote-unquote treat day. But then, you know what? It ended up being the same cycle again. I ended up gaining some of the weight back, struggling again. And then my whole focus kind of changed because I realized how much the success in losing weight and keeping it off comes down to mindset. So I released a course on Udemy on Food Freedom Mindset Makeover to help give that base of like, it doesn't matter what way of eating you use or whatever. If your mindset is not right, then it's not going to last, right? 95% of people who do a diet or who lose weight on a diet end up gaining it all back plus some. That's a scary statistic, but it's the truth, right? So today I want to talk about stress because here's the thing. I listened to the book, The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. I listened to that whole book a few months ago, and it is amazing. I will warn you that it is pretty dry. It's all kind of science-y. I've been geeking out on that stuff, like just the science behind how our bodies, like what they do with how the different macronutrients work in our bodies and the micronutrients and just kind of all that sort of stuff. It's really, really, really cool. So the book, The Obesity Code, essentially Dr. Jason Fung dedicated a bunch of time to figuring out what actually makes us obese and what actually makes us struggle to lose weight or to keep it off. Because the thing is that a lot of studies that you look at when it comes to what works for weight loss and health and those sorts of things, a lot of the studies aren't long enough, right? So you might see something that's like, oh, there's a study of X amount of participants and they did a low calorie diet or they did a low fat diet and they lost X amount of pounds in this amount of time. Amazing. Like low fat is the way to go. But what you're not seeing is the longevity of the fact that the majority of those people then turn around and gain the weight back again, right? 95% of people that lose weight on a diet gain it back. So Jason Fung dedicated a bunch of time and studies. He did a bunch of studies himself. He actually has like his own lab that he, and he always does like human studies to figure out what actually causes obesity, what actually causes people to gain weight and struggle with losing weight. And what it all came down to was hormones, specifically insulin. Insulin is now, I've seen it referred to in a couple different places as the fat hormone, because insulin is essentially what makes our bodies store and hold on to fat. The majority of people, if you're like slightly overweight or obese, you probably have some sort of degree of what's called insulin resistance. And it just means your body is resistant to insulin, which means that there's an excess amount of insulin in your system and it's not letting the glucose into the cells, which is what insulin is supposed to do. And that just comes from eating too much processed, refined carbohydrates and sugar, because then all the insulin gets released and then there's a whole bunch of insulin in your system and then your body just is basically like, nope, not responding to insulin anymore. That's kind of the non-science explanation of insulin resistance. But that makes people fat because then that extra glucose is just being stored as fat instead of going into the cells of the muscles and those sorts of things. Now, this video here is about stress. So the problem with stress, so on the surface, you think, oh, well, when I get stressed, you might have extra cravings. You might start overeating more. You might emotional eat. That's kind of my specialty, is emotional eating. But there's actual science behind why that happens. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about. And then I'm going to give you some practical, very simple practices to put into play to help manage your stress, because that is the key. And so many people, so if you have tried, if you're like, I eat fairly good, like, man, like I manage my food, I eat healthy, I don't eat a bunch of junk food, why am I 50 pounds overweight? It might be stress, right? So what happens when you're stressed? Your body releases a hormone called cortisol, right? Cortisol is known as the stress hormone. And what happens is, like, say way back in the day, like our ancestors, the reason that this happens is because, say way back in the day when we used to have to hunt for our food, and, you know, there was like actual real not fears, real what's the word I'm looking for? Threats to us, right? So say you're out and you're hunting, your ancestors are out and hunting, and then you see a bear, right? And then you're like, oh my God. So then that's like the stress hormone. Cortisol and adrenaline start coursing through your veins to give you that boost of energy to run and get away from whatever that threat is. Okay, but the thing is that when you're stressed, like psychologically, which is the main source of our stress nowadays, is like we don't need a bunch of physical energy to run from whatever's stressing us out. We're just stressed on a day-to-day basis in work and, you know, finances and whatever that might be. But your body doesn't differentiate between those two stresses. So your body still reacts in that same fight or flight response, and it starts releasing the adrenaline and the cortisol. But cortisol then increases insulin because it's cortisol is releasing more glucose into the blood to give you that energy to be able to run. Sorry, my husband was calling. Anyways, to give you that physical strength to get away from the threat. But nowadays, if your stress is, you know, you're sitting at a desk and you're working and you're trying to figure out this project, or you have this deadline coming up, you're getting cortisol is releasing and it's putting more glucose in the system. It's putting up your blood sugar. You're not going and then burning it off because you're not turning around and running away from the stress. You're sitting there and you're working through it, right? So then the extra insulin and the glucose in the system, then that causes the blood sugar crashes, which then is going to cause cravings. So that's actually like the scientific reason that stress will actually give you cravings for bad food, because it actually does heighten your blood sugar, which then leads to the crash, which then leads to the craving. And so that's why for so many people, they're like, well, I don't get it. Like, I'm eating healthy and I'm doing all these things right, but I get the cravings for the bad foods. I can't lose weight. And that's why. It's because of the hormones that are going on in your body related to the stress, right? So that's kind of how that all works. So how do you manage your stress? A lot of times you hear a great way to manage your stress is to do a really tough workout. And that's actually not the best, because the workout puts stress on your body too, physical stress on your body, and that'll release more cortisol. That can cause adrenal fatigue, and those sorts of things. So that's not always the best advice. So the best way to deal with your stress, and these aren't tips, these are practices for you to put into play, because it's something that you need to do on a consistent basis in order to see the benefit from it. So one thing that I really, 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 really recommend, and I've actually been reading a lot about this, and different studies and those sorts of things have been done to show, like, there's been studies out there, like if you Google it, that show like just taking some time for some mindfulness on a day-to-day basis, sitting in silence, in meditation, just doing some deep breaths for like 10 minutes a day, really deep, belly breaths for 10 minutes a day, just doing something like that on a regular basis. And then there's been studies out there that like people didn't change anything else, but that's all they did. These people that live these high stress lives and their waistline started shrinking, they did start losing weight. So it's one of those things. And I know a lot of times, especially if you're really stressed out, you're probably like, well, I don't have time to sit for 10 minutes. But you do. You can find the time. You can get up 10 minutes earlier if you need to. The other thing is, a lot of people feel like watching TV is a good way to unwind at the end of the day and to relax, right? A lot of people spend that time at the end of the day unwinding and relaxing by just watching Netflix or watching the news. That's even worse. The news is like the most stressful thing you can watch. But that actually is not relaxing. That's not going to help you to relax. So maybe even swap out a bit of your TV time and instead spend some time doing some yoga, spend some time doing some deep breathing exercises and doing meditation. Meditation has literally changed my life. It took me a long time to get into it because I was always like, oh man, my mind always wanders. I have now been, and then I heard somebody say, it's called a meditation practice because it takes practice to get really good at it. And that, I don't even remember where I heard that, but that changed my life because I was like, okay, great. So it doesn't need to be perfect. And now I'm like months into like consistently meditating and my mind still wanders, but you just get really good at kind of being like, oh, interesting. Okay, there's a thought. I can put that off to the side. I can think about that later, and just kind of going back to quieting your mind. It's okay if the thoughts come up, and I don't know if they ever will go away. Like, I don't know if I haven't met anybody that, you know, they never have wandering thoughts when they're meditating. So don't aim for that. Don't feel like that's what it needs to be, but just giving yourself like 10 minutes a day of just sitting there quietly, deep breathing, doing some yoga, that's a great way. Journaling is also a great way to relieve some stress. Just get some stuff out of your brain there and just kind of write it all down, get it on paper is a great technique. So anyways, I hope that some of these tips helped you to figure out how to de-stress. And I hope that kind of maybe explains, maybe that kind of resonates with you about, yeah, okay, when I'm going through extra stressful times, like I'm craving a lot. The other thing with stress is that you might have trouble sleeping. If there's a lot of cortisol and adrenaline going through your body at nighttime, you're not going to be able to sleep very good. And then not getting enough sleep puts your body in stress. So then it's like a double whammy. So then you probably notice, like, if you sleep really bad, if you're not getting enough sleep, I know for me, like, that's like, there's a direct connection with, if I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm craving a lot more carbs and sugar and garbage. And that's kind of why. That's how that works. So anyways, I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope that it kind of made you realize how important it is to really figure out how to manage your stress, because stress is a part of life. Like, you're going to be stressed. You're going to have stressful times to go through. You need to learn how to manage it and figure out ways to kind of calm that down a little bit so that it's not putting the excess fat on your body, and you're not at least stressing out about your weight as well, right? So I hope this was helpful. If this was helpful for you, of course, I love the thumbs up and I love the hearts. Go ahead and share this video if you think any of your friends or family members would benefit from this, and I will talk to you later.